Now, if you hit the comma key and you go into the render sets here, you're going to see that some of these have very, very sketchy looking drawing, and adds a lot of energy to your drawing. It looks like somebody went in with a sketch pen or a pencil or a piece of charcoal and really kind of just went through and with some directional strokes started shading in the values of their image. So one way you can do that is essentially what we've done here. What we're going to do is we're going to, you know what, we can keep the canvas that we've already made. I'm going to go ahead and say we can copy what we've done, and instead of pasting it over here, I'm just going to say insert, and then that's going to move that overpaint color canvas that we've done. So F8 is canvas color. This one we're going to hit reset filter. And now what we're going to do is we're going to crank this up. Instead of adding drop shadows and stuff, we're just going to have this create some sketchy overlapping lines. So we're going to go back in here to the modifiers again. We're going to add some rotation. We're going to make that width and that height. And we're going to add some rotation orientation variations here. And now if I make this smaller, it's going to go ahead and make everything look really sketchy and scratchy. Again, though, we can keep most of that to the background. So instead of having it just on our object or just on our background, I'm going to put it mostly in the background, but we can also fudge that a little bit and maybe have a little bit of that overlap into our object. And also remember, you have this mask blur. So you can take this mask blur and you can crank that up and you'll kind of get it kind of sketched through your object. So it kind of looks like they were drawing it and they were just doing adding some sketchy lines here. Now our canvas direction is going this way. If you want to match that, just go into your modifiers here and you can say your base orientation. You can go through and you can just rotate those sketchy lines to whatever direction you want. And when we were adjusting that, those offsets here, you can actually move those sketches over to the right and maybe down a little bit. It's kind of up to you. And again, if you go in here to this width and you crank that up, you'll get even more of a frenetic, sketchy look, or you can crank this down if you want it to be a little bit more subtle. And if you want it to be really subtle, remember you can go back into your opacity and you can just drop that down. Now to play with some of these color settings, what we can do, this does have a Polypaint on it, so I can turn that Polypaint on. However, when I go to hit BPR, the way we have this set up is it's going to disregard that Polypaint because we do have that desaturation node on here. So if I turn that off, you're going to see, okay, now we're getting some color back. This isn't a very colorful mech here, so what I'm going to do is to make it really colorful, I'm going to turn Polyframe on and I'm going to turn line off. So now we have tons of color on here. If you don't have any color, you can always go down to the polygroup menu and you can do, I just did an auto groups. And that put every single object to have its own polygroup here. So now when I hit BPR render, you're going to see those sketchy lines are starting to drag some of that color onto the canvas. So if you want to play with that a little bit more, again, go to the, that's our canvas layer. So here's our overpaint color. So we go back into the modifiers here. You can adjust the hue variation, so it'll kind of, you can see it's going from a green to kind of a blue when it goes into the canvas. Saturation variations. Intensity variations. And another thing that might help this is if you wanted to look painterly, that outline's kind of killing it. So you can go back in here to the outline edge and you can turn that off. And now you're seeing you get a much more painterly result. You don't generally have a lot of outlines when you're painting. So now it looks like you have a very chalky pastel drawing.